Hey, in this video I'm going to share with you how to build the generate yearly report, which is another exercise of UiPath or another advanced exercise of UiPath using RE framework. But in this exercise, we're going to create two projects, which are one for dispatcher and then another one for performer. So in a high level view, the dispatcher job or functionality is go to system one application and then filter the items, and because on this exercise we just need the items under WI for type and then send those items into an orchestrator queue, which we will also create in this exercise. And after that, that's basically the job of dispatcher and its function. Then once we completed that, we will build the performer, which will start by connecting into the orchestrator queue and then get remaining items or the WI ID, and then from that WI ID it will also open system one application, search that item and look for the tax ID. After getting the tax ID, it will start creating or downloading monthly report or monthly invoices. And then after getting all the needed monthly invoices, it will upload those invoices and then update the work item, which works similarly like in calculate client security hash. But this one is a bit, I think, complicated or more complex compared to the calculate client security hash. After updating the work item, it will tag the work queue item as successful in our orchestrator queue. So this performer process will uh, continuously um, run until all the remaining items in the orchestrator queue has been completed or processed. So I guess we can now start building this project. So let's go. Okay, now we can start this exercise, generate yearly report, and the first project that we need to do is the dispatcher part. So after the dispatcher part, we will work on the second part, which is the performer. So now let's start with the dispatcher. So make sure to open your UiPath Studio and also make sure that your orchestrator is connected. So from this page, make sure to select Robotic Enterprise Framework template, and then let's name this project Generate Yearly Report 2021, and let's name it as a dispatcher so we will not get confused. And then make sure to select your prepared location. So I will be using the same folder I used on the previous exercise, and I will save that to this folder, and we can put some description. You can write any description that you want, but I will be include here that I will be using Google Chrome browser. And again, this is the dispatcher part of generate yearly report 2021. Now, after you populate all this field, just hit the create button. Okay, once your project is ready, the first thing that we need to do in here is to edit our configuration file. So to do that, make sure that you are in your project panel. Look for the File Explorer icon, and from this folder, go inside the data folder and look for the config Excel file. Make sure to open it. Now, once the file is open, the first thing that we need to do in here is go to Settings tab, and we need to modify this orchestrator queue name value. So remove the current value there, and we need to change it or update it into in-house process 4. So that's the same name indicated on the PDF guide that you downloaded or you can download from the UiPath Academy. And also let's remove this blank row because we don't need that. And since we already put here the orchestrator queue name, let's also create this queue name in the orchestrator page. So make sure to save that, and let's copy this value to make sure that we will be uh, using the same name. So go to your orchestrator page, and well, there's a latest update in UiPath. This is now the Apollo design, but I think it's pretty the same on the previous design. So once you are in your orchestrator, go to the queues tab, and then from here, uh, click the add queue button and create a new queue. And now let's put the orchestrator queue name that we put in our configuration file. Now we can also put some description here like generate yearly report 2021, and there's no need to modify any of this additional setting in here. Just click the add button, and once it is created you will see that there's no item yet. So the goal of our dispatcher project is to send to this orchestrator queue all the items from the system 1 that is under the WI port type. So later we will be doing that. So let's go back to the configuration file, and we need to add two more setting in here. So the second one is the system 1 URL, and the other one is system 1 credential. It's pretty the same with our previous exercise, which is calculate client security hash. Now we need to provide the value of this. Let's start with the URL. I don't memorize it, so let me navigate to the system one site. Okay, it's acmetest.uipath.com. So copy that URL, but make sure to remove the login word in there. Go back to Studio. Now paste it there. Make sure that you capture the correct URL. And then for the credential, make sure to copy the one you created from the orchestrator. So once you are in this page, just go to Asset tab and look for the credential you created. So we can use the same credential that you use in the calculate client security hash. So my assumption is that you were able to follow and complete and understand the previous exercise, which is calculate client security hash, because if not, maybe you'll get confused on this setup. So let's go back to the configuration file, and let's put here the credential name that we created on the asset of orchestrator. Now once this value has been provided in here, make sure to save that, but we will not close it for the meantime, because oh, there's another step that we need to do in here. Go to the constant tab and make sure to modify the value into 2. So the maximum retry of this project will be 2. So again, make sure to save that. And now the next thing that we need to do is we need to go to the UiPath Studio on our dispatcher project, and here our transaction item we need, or the transaction item variable, we need to set its variable type into string. So to do that, go to your Main.xaml file, or double click it to open this XAML file. And my PC is a bit slow today, so just bear with me. So once the main.xaml file is open, make sure to click on the framework, or in this the main sequence, and go to the variable tab and look for the transaction item variable, because by default in this framework it is declared as a queue item, so we need to change it into string. So just look for the string variable type and click outside, and that will be saved. So once you modify the transaction item, you will get errors on some of the scope like get transaction data and process transaction. I think you're familiar with this, but again, let's do it again step by step. Let's start with the get transaction data scope. So double click from that sequence, and let's fix this first one on the left side. So we need to just reset it to nothing by removing the current value, and then click outside of the activity, go back, and again set it to nothing, then click outside the activity, and that should be fixed. And then the next thing is this workflow. So as you can see in the import argument, the inside variable type or argument type is currently a queue item. So we need to change this into string. So to do that, we need to open workflow, or we need to open this get transaction data workflow, and then from here go to arguments tab and look for the transaction item. Make sure to set that into string, and that should be good. Also in this project, in this dispatcher, we're not going to get any transaction item from the queue, because what we are going to do later is to send item to the queue. So this activity is no longer needed, so we can just delete this one, and let's save it for the meantime, and then close this get transaction data. Now going back to this scope, let's click import arguments again, and make sure to set the transaction item into transaction item as well. Now they are both string, so we can now eliminate the error. But it is showing that we still have an error within this sequence, so let's look for the other error. Let's check exception. So here we have another nothing assignment in here. Let's just remove that, click outside, go back and set it back to nothing, and click outside, and that should be fixed. So I guess that's all of the error that we have on the get transaction data. We can now save it and go to the main link. And when you go here, you will see that our get transaction data scope is now clear of any error. Now let's go into the process transaction scope. Just double click inside that sequence. Now you can see there's a problem with this activity. It's because again, the variable type of this argument is currently queue item. So we need to fix that by opening that workflow and go to argument tab and look for transaction item and change it into string. After that, just save this XAML file, close it. Going back to the main, let's click import arguments and let's set it back to transaction item. Okay, now we have the error clear. The next thing is on the set transaction status, go to the finally part. So just click there and go to try. And here there's another transaction item which is currently queue item, so we need to update that as well. We need to open the workflow, and then from here go to arguments tab. Again, make sure the transaction item argument type is equals to string, and once you do that you will get an error on this tree activity. But since we no longer need these activities, we can just delete them, and make sure to still connect this increment activity because that's a critical part of the process. So let's just connect it there. This is the part that increment the transaction number. So if you forget to connect this, you will probably get an error or issue when you run this project. So make sure to save this XAML file and close it. Now going back to our main, let's import argument again, and let's set again the transaction item into the transaction item and hit OK. Now after that, make sure to click save. Now let's go back to the main link, and I don't see any more error, but to verify that, we need to go to analyze file and click validate project. And if you don't have any error, you should have the same message in here on the error list. There should be no errors found. If there's still any error, I think you can just easily go back to those part and maybe you just missed something. So now let's proceed. What would be the next step here? So the next step is we need to copy the same workflow and sequences that we use or we built on the calculate client security hash project. So to do that, we need to go to that folder. So let's start with the generate yearly report folder first. Go to your file explorer. So this is the generate yearly report, and then from here just click on this blank space and press Ctrl N from your keyboard. So that shortcut command will just open a new folder with the same location. So I'll put that on this side. So now they are both generate yearly report. But here what I'm going to do in this part is I will go to my previous project, which is the calculate client security hash. So which is this one. So now this is the calculate and this is the generate. So let me because we need to copy some system or some sequence in here so that we don't need to do it again from the scratch. So go to your system1 folder in calculate client security hash, and also go to your system1 folder in here, but since we don't have yet, let's start with creating that system1 folder. And after you create that, go inside that folder. Now from calculate client security hash, we need to copy three sequences. So those are the login, the close, and navigate to work items. So just copy them and paste that on our generate yearly report inside system1 folder. And now we have the same sequences. There's another one on the guide if you are looking into it. There's another one, it's send email.xaml, but that's not a critical part of this project, so we will just skip that one. So once you are good, let's just close the calculate client security hash folder to avoid confusion. And now we have this tree sequence under our system1 folder. So let's close this folder, and now in your project funnel just hit the refresh button, and now we have the tree sequence. Okay, I forgot another XAML file that we also need to copy from calculate client security hash. So let's do the same step. Let's open file explorer again, and then by pressing Ctrl N to open a new folder. So let me go back to my calculate client security hash, and here there's another XAML that is important, and we need so that's inside the framework folder. It is the get app credential, because by default when you start creating RE or when you start using RE framework, get app credential.xaml file is not included on the framework folder. So we need to copy that, and let's go back to our generate yearly report, open the framework folder and paste that same XAML file. All right, now we have all that we need from the framework folder. So I guess we can now go back to our UiPath Studio and hit refresh. And let's check our framework. Now we have the GetApp credential. Since we also added this XAML file, let's also now added the activity or the package or dependency related to this XAML file. So to do that, go to manage packages, because that sequence will not work without this package. So go to all packages and search for UiPath.Credential, and yeah, look for this package, and whatever the latest version there, just click install and hit the save button. Now it will start adding these credential dependencies in our workspace. So that is important because we cannot retrieve credential from our orchestrator asset without this dependencies, the credential.activities, because most of the activities that we use on the GetUp credential sequence is part of this UiPath.Credential. Okay, let's just wait for it to be added. And if you don't know where you can get GetAppCredential.xaml file, I mentioned it on my calculate client security hash latest video, you can go to the description so you can go directly to that part of the video. So it's just easy, guys. Just look on that video. So now we have the credential package added. Now we can proceed to the next step. So from here, the next step that we need to do is to open the InitAllApplication XAML file. So that's inside the framework folder. So open this one, and from here we need to invoke two sequence or two workflow. So the first one is the system1 login. So go to your system1 folder, drag that in our initialize all application sequence, and here we need to import some arguments, so the URL and credential. So I will go to my configuration file to avoid mistake with the name, and here we need to say inconfig and then enclose the name, and we need to convert that to string. The other one is the credential, so copy that. Let's go back in here. It will be inconfig system1 credential that the string. So the spelling has a uppercase Y, but that should be fine because that's the same in here. And the next one is the system1 navigate to work item. So let's drag that in here. And this one doesn't have any arguments needed, so this should be fine. Once you added these two workflow, we can now save this and close this init all applications. Now the next step is go to or open close all application. Again, that's within the framework folder. And in here, we need to just invoke the system1 underscore close workflow. And again, there's no argument needed in here. So once you added that, just save this workflow and close it. And then the next step is go to kill all processes. So in this sequence, we just need to add one activity. So go to your activity tab and look for kill process. I already see it, but yeah, this is how you search it, kill process. And since we are using or we will be using Google Chrome browser on this exercise, let's just put here Chrome. So it's different when you are using Internet Explorer. So that depends. Make sure to take a look on that. But I would suggest for you to use Google Chrome on this exercise because there's some difference when using IE versus Google Chrome. So once you uh, identify the process name, just save this and close that sequence. Now let's go to get transaction data. So where is get transaction data? That is also within your framework folder. So just activate that. And from here, we need to delete the get transaction item, which we already deleted earlier. Now we need to add the first activity prior this. So that will be the attached browser activity. So let's go to activity. Let's look for attached browser activity and let's put that in here. And we need to have the Acme page open. So for the meantime, I will log in manually here. I hope that you still remember the email and password that you use. So we need to go to the work item page, and here I will attach that page or I will indicate the page like this. Okay, I don't know what did it say. It's like saying there are other Google Chrome profile, but let me try it again. Mhm. Let's indicate on screen. Okay. Okay, I'm getting an error indicating my Chrome browser. So let me try to refresh this browser and then me open my browser again. Let's go back to Acme page. Okay, now let's go back to work items and let's try to indicate this page again. I hope you're not getting that same error I'm getting right now. Okay, I think problem solved. Now we can check the selector, but I think there's nothing that we need to change in here. Let's just hit OK. And now inside this attached browser, we need to add another activity named element exists. So let's look for that. So element exists. Oops, I spelled it wrong, but oh, it's a good search. I'll look for this activity, drag that inside our do. Now, we need to check if the next page exists. That is the goal of this activity. So, for example, we are processing transaction number one. So we need to check if the next page exists, which is transaction number two. So let's try to indicate that page. Um, okay, so let's use number two. But in this case, we need to make the selector dynamic. We cannot, so if we will look on the selector if this element exists, you can see that the AA name is equals to 2. But since we will be navigating into different pages, this will become 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we need to make this selector flexible on that process. So we need to make the selector dynamic. So how to do that? Just cancel this first. Make sure to activate this activity. Now in this property panel, just remove the value of our selector. You need to do that in here. Do not do that from this part. So you need to remove the value from this part. So now it's blank. Now for the meantime, let's assign a temporary variable. Maybe we can use transaction item or maybe transaction number and hit and or click anywhere. And now once we click this, you will notice that the expression editor become different. So now we can create a dynamic URL or dynamic selector, I mean. But my mistake, I did not copy the selector. So let's go back to this activity. Let's try to indicate the element again. Let's use this page number 2 and let's check the selector first. Let's build a better selector. I think there are other attributes that we can use in here. Okay, I'm trying to open UI Explorer. Mhm. So we have a name tag. I think that's good, and we can also use the class. And yeah, I think just the class. Let's validate it and let's highlight it. All right. So later we need to make it dynamic, so it will become something like 3. And when you validate it, it should still be valid and should be able to identify that page. Okay, so there's only one challenges in here because we will start at page 1, and if we will inspect this element, we will notice that uh, page 1 has a different class name. So if you can see here, the class name of page 1 is page number current because this is the current active page, and the following page number has only a class name page number. So we need to make this class dynamic so that even if we are just processing page number 1, we will still be able to find this element. So to do that, on the UI Explorer screen, we need to add a wildcard in here so that even if we are processing page number 1, we'll still be able to find that element. So now let's hit or let's copy this selector for the meantime and hit save. Now this will be updated It doesn't matter if it's 2 or 1. Just make sure that you have the tag as well as the class, page number, and then a wildcard or an asterisk sign in there. So hit OK. And now let's put a better label in here. Okay. And now on the selector property, let's remove this value. And you will notice the editor is different. Now let's put a temporary variable. Like, I'm not sure if there's other way to do this, but this is how I'm doing it, how I do dynamic selector. So assign a temporary variable in there and then just click this button. Now we have this expression editor. And from here, we can paste the selector. So when creating or when using dynamic selector, we need to enclose it into a double quote. And then since this is the only part that should be dynamically changing, we will change it into a double quote, a plus sign, and then the transaction number because it should always be equals to the transaction number. And since transaction number is an integer variable type, we need to convert it into string by using that to string and then another plus sign and a double quote. So now this is now considered as a dynamic selector because this transaction number value in there will always be equals to the transaction number. Now let's hit OK. And so the only thing we need to do in here is to add an output variable. So let's create the variable directly from here by pressing Ctrl K from your keyboard. And let's name it next page exists. I think that's the same variable name they use on the guide. Let me verify. Yep. And then, by the way, we no longer need this sequence in here. So we can just delete this. We'll add a new one. So check next page exists. Now the next thing is we need to add an if activity. So let's add that. Excuse me. So from here, the condition will be the next page exists. And then let's show else. And if the next page exists, we need to assign the transaction number to our transaction item variable. So to do that, let's look for the assign activity, drag that in here, and now let's assign that to our transaction item. So that will be equals to our IN transaction number, and it should be a string, so we need to use that to string. However, if the next page did not exist, we will be doing an assign activity again, but this time we will assign nothing to our transaction item. Oops. Oh, why you're editing there? hmm Now set it to nothing. Alright, so I guess that's all that we need in our get transaction data. So let's save it. Now, before we leave this workflow, I want to test it to make sure that everything is working before we run it later. So for the meantime, I will assign a default value to our transaction number. So I'll set it to 1. And let's put a write line activity in here that will tell us what is the out transaction item. So, okay, let's label it. What's happening? There's some kind of delay in my PC. Let's I hope you do this on your end as well to make sure that everything is working fine. Okay. Okay, now make sure that you have this page open. Let's remove this. And from here, we can do run file. Make sure to save it first and then run file. So it will check if the page 1 exists. And as you can see on the output window, we have the right line transaction is 1. Now let's try to check other pages as well because that's the active page. Maybe let's try page number 5 and let's see if this will work. So save and run file. And we can see in the output panel that there is a transaction is 5. So I guess and I believe this workflow is working so far. So now let's remove the default value and make sure to save it. Now let's go on to the next step. Okay, so let's close this first, and then the next step is we need to open Process.xaml file. So let's go to the project panel again, or project tab. Let's open this XAML file. Okay, in here, the first thing that we need to do is click the processing page number. So like this. But again, by default, when you open the work item page, the default page is 1. So if it's 1, we should not click it anymore because it's already active. We will only click the next page if it's greater than 1. So to do that, what we will do is add a click activity. So add that. So let's say click the next page. Okay, what happened? Let's try it again. Say click the next page and then let's indicate, let's say for example 2. This activity, we need to make the selector this activity dynamic as well. So let's check the selector first. And yeah, there's probably other attributes that we can add. I think we can also add the class name. So let's add the class in here. And yep, the class should be page number. So let's copy that and hit save. And then again, to make this activity, the selector of this activity dynamic, we need to remove the selector current value and assign a temporary variable. I hope that you copy the previous selector before you remove it. Now let's open the expression editor and let's build our dynamic selector. So there are 2 lines in here. They need to be just in one line and we need to enclose them into double quote like this. And again, our dynamic attribute here is the AA name, so we need to replace it by our transaction item. Transaction item is already a string variable type, so there's no need for us to convert it to that string. And this is now our complete dynamic selector. So make sure that you have the same. Pause this video first and make sure to validate your selector. Okay, now let's hit OK. But again, I told you earlier that if we are processing page number 1, we should not do this click activity anymore. So what we can do is let's add an if activity first, and then let's check what is the transaction item. So let's say uh, transaction item that equals 1. Then what we're going to do is let's just put a lag message so this will not be blank. Let's look for a lag message activity. Let's say it's an info message. Let's just say processing page 1. And now if the transaction item is not equals to 1, that's the only time that we will click the next page. So make sure to move that in here. And then after that, the next step would be to add another activity name on element appear. So let's look for that activity on element appear. Okay, look for this one. Let's add that after the if activity. And let's after we click the next page, we need to make sure if the page did activated by using this class. I think you're already familiar with the class of the active page. So let's try that now. Let's indicate that active page, and we need to make this, or we need to also make this selector dynamic. So let's go to the selector. Let's validate this. So let's open UI Explorer because there's an important attribute that we need to add in here. So let's just wait for it to open. I think my OBS studio recording slows my PC. So anyways, going back in here, make sure to select the class attribute and then make sure to copy all the selector. So Control C from your keyboard and hit the save button. Again, make sure that your class is page numbers current. That is important. And now hit OK. Now we need to uh, make the selector dynamic, but let's modify the page, or let's modify this label first on element appear next page. So let's remove this value and let's put a temporary variable. And now let's click this button to show the expression editor. Now let's put our selector. Need to just have one line in here and enclose it with a double quote. And from here, we need to change this to IN transaction item. So that's the complete selector. It's almost similar to the click activity. The only difference is the class name. So there's a current keyword in here. So make sure to that you have the same selector. Now let's hit OK. And we can also add an output variable in here, but we will not be using this. So let's say next page found. I think that's good enough. Now inside this, what we need to do is, okay, so from each page, what we need to do is to scrape this table. So to do that, make sure to click the do sequence, make sure that this is activated, and then click data scraping. And from here, hit next and click anywhere from the table and hit yes. And there's no need to change this and hit finish. Now, unlike calculate client security hash, we will not be spanning into multiple pages in here. What we're going to do is process each page and then there will be a click activity to move to the other page. So when this pop-up show up, make sure to click no. Again, make sure to click no, not yes. So hit no, and this will be our data scraping part. Now this extract structured data activity by default created a default variable as well, or output data table as well. So I don't want to use this because based on the guide, there's a different name. So we will be using that. Let's say DT or DT work items. Is that right? Yep. And hit OK. Okay, what happened? Okay. Now on the variable tab, let's remove the default data table variable created. Now we only have DT work items. So extract work item page table. And after that, the next step is we need to upload the WI ID of all items under WI4. So to do that, we need to add a for each row in data table activity. So let's look for that activity for each row in a data table. So add that in here. And now to make it similar to the guide, let's change this to row. And this should be equals to DT work items. Now on the body part, we need to add an if conditions because again we need to validate the items because there's a filter that we need to follow. So in the condition, it's just the same on the guide. The type should be that equals WI4 and row status should be equals to open. So that will be our condition. So if the condition is met, the next activity that we need to add in here is the add queue item. So look for add queue item activity. And now on the add queue item, go to the item information property and create an argument by clicking in here. So let's name it WIID, which is equals to row WIID dot to string. So that's just similar to the guide or to the PDF guide. So let's hit OK after that. And there's another uh, property here that we need to set up, which is the queue name. So in which queue name this item should be sent. So we have a queue name on our config file. Let me just copy that. So copy this. Now let's go back to the studio and then again go to your queue name field. This should be equals to config and then the orchestrator queue name and make sure to convert into string. So now let's see if we still have anything here to add. Okay, so error is now clear. Now, yeah, I think that's all that we need to add in our process.xaml file. Make sure to save it. Now let's open main.xaml file again according to the guide, and it says there that make sure that the process uh, workflow has a correct argument. So let's validate if it's the same. Yes, it's just pretty the same. And yeah, I think that's all that we need to do in our dispatcher part. So now we can test it. So before you test it, make sure to close your configuration file, but make sure to save everything. And then make sure that you don't also have any Acme System 1 open in your browser because that might affect our run later. So make sure to close the tab. And now we will test this via debug mode so that if in case there is an error, UiPath will tell us which part of our project did that error occur. So to run it via debug, let's go to Design tab and hit Debug. So I hope you were able to follow all this step. And if you have any question or you get an issue and you are not you can't or you're getting a hard time fixing it, make sure to put that question on the comment section of this video. And also please also include the timestamp where you are getting the error so we can easily see, or I can easily check what probably the cause of your error. So it's now navigating to our system one and logging in using the credential from our UiPath asset or orchestrator asset. Now it goes to work item page and they should be now doing the extracting part. Mhm. What is happening? Okay, let's just wait and see what probably the issue in here. Okay, so it says there was an error on element appear. I think this is the part that we were not able to test. So it cannot find this element. We need to fix this. So, okay, maybe we missed something in here. Okay, let's check and let's try it again. I'm thinking that maybe we add an attached browser activity before on element appear, but since I use the complete selector, that should be good. Repeat forever, I think, yeah, this one I forgot. We need to set it into false. And yeah, I think wait for ready should be set to complete. Now let's save this project and let's try it again. Again, make sure to log out from the Acme system and close that browser. So I hope that fixed the issue, but sometimes it's good that we're getting an error. Again, I will run it by a debug mode because when we get any error, we get to know more of the activity, especially those property that we always need to make sure are set to the proper values. So let's see. Let's look forward for more errors. Okay, it's going back to the system one. We'll try to log in again. Navigate to work items. And okay, let's see if the code will work now. Okay, it was able to click the next page. So that works. That's the only issue earlier. The wait forever should always be set to false and wait for ready should be set to complete. I think you can experiment between on those attributes so you will really find out what's the difference or when you should set it to true, especially the repeat forever. But based on the experience, it should be always set to false. Okay, now moving to the next page. We're in the page 6 now. And I forgot to mention earlier, make sure that you have reset your data before you test it to make sure that all the work items are fresh. Okay, we're at page 8 now. You might be wondering why it's taking some time on each page. It is because it will scrape that table and then filter all the items under WI4 and then send it to the work queue before it proceeds to the next page. So there's only two more pages to go. Let's just see. I hope you're having the same run on your machine right now if you are following this. We're now in the last page. So the next transaction number after 12 will be 13 and number 13 will not be found on the get transaction data scope. So it will set the transaction item into nothing and that will terminate our dispatcher process. So let's see. Okay. Yeah, it lag out now and all right. I think it's running good now. It was able to process 12 pages because we have a total of 12 pages in there. So before I verify it on the orchestrator queue, let me just check the Acme page. I want to check how many items are currently under WI4. So, so just do the same on your side. Again, the batch of work items might be different on my side to your sample. Sometimes there are only 10 pages, there are 12 pages, and yeah, I think there are different patches of this work item. So page 1 we have 1 and page 2 is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Oh, there's a lot on this patch. 14, 15, and last page 16, 17. So there are total of 17 work items under WI4 on my sample. So I will go to my orchestrator. Did I said 17? I think I said 17. So in my work queue, there should be 17 items. If not, hopefully not. So let's go to the queue tab and let's see how many remaining items do we have in here. Well, actually, there are 18. Well, I think there's a problem with my count. Okay, I have 18 items. Well, that's okay. More than my count is better than less than my count. So I will no longer validate that again. So that's all that we need to do on the dispatcher part. Make sure that the number of items under WI4 in your system 1 matches the remaining items in your work queue. So, right, this is now the dispatcher process and we have completed it. Now we can move to the next project, which is the performer process. Okay, now let's build our performer process for the generate yearly report. So again, make sure to open your UiPath Studio and make sure that you are still connected to your orchestrator. So to start with this project, again, select a robotic enterprise framework template. Now let's name this project generate yearly report 2021 and this will be performer and make sure to select your prepared locations. So I will be using the same location and again I will just put some description in here and this will be the performer part of generate yearly report. After that, hit the create button. Okay, so once the project is available, the first thing that we need to do in here is to make sure that the transaction item is set to queue item type. So to check that, go to your project panel, open the Main.xaml file, and then click on the main sequence, go to variable tab and make sure that transaction item is equals to queue item. So there's no need to change that. And then the next step is we need to open our configuration file. So you're familiar with this already for sure. Open that and go inside the data folder, open the configuration file. And then from here, let's go to the setting tab and we need to change the orchestrator queue name. It should be equals to the orchestrator queue name that we created, which is the in-house process 4. So copy this, go back to your config file and replace this value. Again, make sure that it is in-house process 4. Now let's remove this extra row in here. And we also need to add a setting for system 1 and system 1 credential. So let's name it system 1 URL and system 1 credential. Now system 1 URL, we can use this. Let's go here and make sure to remove some other parts of the URL that is not needed. It should be only until .com slash forward slash. Now the credential, let's go to our orchestrator assets and copy our credential name in here. Copy that. Go back here and paste the value. Make sure to save it. And on the constant sheet, max retry number should be set to 0, so there's no need to change it. Okay, now we need to do the same step we did earlier on the dispatcher part where we copy some workflow from the calculate client security hash. So to do that, let's go back to Studio and let's open the project folder and then let's press Ctrl N from your keyboard and let's put that folder in the left side. Now on the left side, look for your calculate client security hash project and go to system 1 folder. Now in our generate yearly report performer folder, let's create a new folder in here and let's name it system 1 and go inside that folder as well. Now from calculate client security hash project, we need to copy several workflow. So those are the login, system 1 close, navigate to work items, navigate to work item details, and update work item. So that's a total of 5 workflows. So copy them, paste that to our generate yearly report system 1 folder. And again, there's another one based from the guide. That's a send email.xaml file, but that's not critical on this project, so we will not include that. So now let's before we close this calculate client security hash folder, let's also copy another workflow which can be found inside the framework folder. So that is the get app credential. So copy this and now go back to our generate yearly report folder. Let's go inside the framework folder as well and let's paste that XAML file. Okay, now we should be able to close this one now and this one as well. Now let's refresh our project panel. Now we can see our system 1 folder with the workflow that we copied and our framework should have now our GetApp credential. And again, since we add the XAML file, we also need to add a package that will be needed by this XAML or workflow. So go to your manage packages and then from here go to all packages and search for UiPath.Credentials. Look for that one, hit install and save. Okay, once added, you should be able to see the dependencies in here, the credential.activities. So now let's go on to the next step. So we need to open InitAllApplication. You can find that inside the framework folder. So activate this XAML file, and here we need to invoke the system1 login. So open our system1 folder, look for the login and drag it here. Now we need to set its arguments. So the first one is the system1 URL. I will copy the name from my configuration file to avoid spelling mistake. Now let's say inconfig system1 URL that to string, and the other one is system1 credential. Let's go back in here, inconfig that to string. Hit OK, and that's all that we need for the initial application. We can now save it and close this workflow. Now the next thing is we need to go to our close all application workflow. So that's also within the framework folder. Activate this one, and in here we just need to invoke the system1 close, and there's no argument needed in here, so just save that. Then the next one is KillAllProcess. So that's also within the framework folder. Here we just need to add an activity name kill process. I think you're getting familiar with this step right now because we're just doing the same thing since the client calculates security hash exercise. And since we will be using Google Chrome browser, we need to set here or put in here the Chrome and save that. Now we can now close that workflow. And the next thing is we need to open Process.xaml file. Let's go back to project tab and let's open this one. Okay, so in the Process.xaml file, I'm just looking into the guide, we need to create a string variable. Okay, did I miss anything from here? I think no. Okay, let's start with an assign activity. Go to your activity tab, look for the assign activity. And it says here that we need to create a variable name WIID. Should be a string type. Yep. And it should be equals to InTransactionItem dot specific content WIID that the string, and hit OK. And then after that, we need to invoke another system1 workflow, which is navigate to work item details. So let's go back to the project tab and let's drag this. Oh no, navigate to work item details. So this one, and it needs one argument. So let's provide the WIID, which is what we just created, and the system1 URL should be equals to that to string. Right. Now the next thing is we need to create a blank sequence. And yeah, oops, do I had an error? Oh, okay. So WIID inside this workflow is an integer type, so we need to convert it to int. So we can just simply do it by using the cint function and hit OK. And after that, again, we need to create a new blank sequence. So create a new sequence, and we will name this sequence system1 extract vendor information. Cannot see it clearly. Yeah, system1 extract vendor information. Make sure to save this sequence inside the system1 folder and hit the create. And then in here, what we just need to do is extract the tax ID. So we need to have an output argument in here, name, we can say out tax ID. It should be of string type and the direction should be out. So to start with this sequence, make sure that you have your Acme page open, and let's use a sample WI for items. So this one. And then from here, we need to capture this tax ID. And I think it's the same with client information. So all the information is under the tax or under a P element. So we need to start getting this whole text first, then we can extract the tax ID. Right, so to do that, we need to start with an attached browser activity, and we need to indicate that page. And then in here, let's check the selector. Okay, that should be good. And then we need to use a getText activity. Get the, what do you call this? Vendor information. Alright, and then oops, let's indicate that. Oh, okay, let's indicate this part. Now, let's save it to, let's say, vendor information. And let's just check the selector. Let's see if there are other attributes that we can add in here. Using just a tag P, I think is not good enough. So in here we can, hmm, I think there's no other thing that we can use in here. Okay, I think we don't have other choice, but let me just check one thing in here. I'm not sure if you know how to use DOM-XPath, but using this what they call this developer option, if you press Control F, and I will just try to find how many P element we have in here. So as you can see, there are 4 P. Okay, so I think I cannot just use that P tag because there are 4 P element in here or 4 paragraph element in there. So let me check again what are the other attributes that I could possibly use. I think there's an ID, which is a static ID. Hmm, No, why we let's try to indicate the element again. Okay, I'm trying to figure out a better approach in this. Just bear with me. Okay, seems like there's really no other attributes that we can use. But let's try. Let's see if this will work or not. Let's try to highlight it. Yeah, okay, maybe that's fine. So let's save it. Let's go back to Studio. Let's hit OK. And then after we extract it, the next thing that we need to do is to use assign activity to extract just the tax ID text. So let's create, oh no, we need to assign it to our out tax ID argument value, and the value should be vendor information that's split and byron and that new line that to car array 0 that substring tax ID with a space that length. Now let's check if this will work. So to test this, we need to add a right line activity in here, and let's just say tax ID is out tax ID. Now let's test this file before we move to the next step. Make sure again that this page is open. Now let's use run file and we should be able to get this. Okay, there's a problem. Start index. Okay, let's check that. Okay, let me check the assign. Okay, the error says that start index cannot be larger than the length of the string. Okay, let's check that. Mhm. And let me make sure that we are capturing the vendor information correctly. And it's probably wrong in this formula. Substring. Okay. Okay, let's try it again. And we get an error again. Let's check if the vendor information is okay. It's capturing correct vendor information. Now there's a problem in this port. There is a space. I think I sign it right. Okay, I just want to see this information. So let's remove substring first. Let's try it again. Run file. There is no tax ID capture. Why is that? Mm, is it because there's a space? Yep, let's check. Thinking maybe there's a space on the first line. So let me just verify this. Okay, it's not capturing anything on this part. Maybe we can use a different formula. Maybe we can say that substring tax ID plus this formula is the same that we use on the client security hash. So this will be oops, index of tax ID plus tax ID that length that split environment that new line that to car array 0. Let's try this formula. I think the one on the guide is, well, actually there's no formula in the guide mentioned. Is there? No. So let's try this other formula. Let me run it again by a run file. And yes, we're capturing now the tax ID. So let's try to use other WI for work items just to make sure that it's really working before we proceed to the next step. Let's try this one. This one is RO87. Let's run file. And it says RO87 231. Okay. So if you did not see this, this is just the same formula that we use in our calculate client security hash in extracting client information. So I hope that you were able to copy that correctly. Now that it's good, we can now remove the right line activity and we have a default value no. So that's all that we need for this sequence. Now let's save it and let's close that. And the next thing is, so we need to invoke that workflow we just created on the process workflow. So look for that and then we need to map it into a variable name tax ID and hit OK. And we need to create a workflow that navigate to a dashboard page. So let's create a new sequence. Let's name it system1 navigate to dashboard. And make sure to save this workflow inside the system1 folder. Hit the create button. So basically what the function of this sequence is just to click the home button. So yeah, let's add a click activity and let's indicate that button. You can use either this link or this link. I think we can use this one. And let's just validate the selector. Okay, the selector is not good, so let's try to build a better one. So here you will see I don't like the parent ID. There's an AA name, there's an inner text, and what else? I think that's good enough. Let's hit save and hit OK. Now let's also activate simulate click. And before we leave this, just make sure that it's working by using run file. Let's see if it will click the home link. Yes, it's working, I guess. Right. So that's all that we need in this workflow. Now let's close that and invoke to our Process.xaml page again. So let's go there and look for navigate to dashboard. Invoke that here, and this doesn't need an argument. So the next step is we need to navigate to the download monthly report page. So to do that, we need to create a new sequence. So let's start a new blank sequence and let's name this one system1 navigate or navigate to monthly report. And again, make sure to save it inside the system1 folder and hit the create button. So here, what we need to do is from this page, we need to click this report and download monthly report. So like that. So going back. Mm, okay, let's see how we will be doing that. Let's add, I think we can start with an attached browser and let's indicate that page. Let me just check the selector. This one should be good. Now we do click and let's indicate this button. Click reports. Let's just provide a good label. Let's simulate click and let me just check the selector as well. And I think this one is good. Let me just verify. Hit OK after that. And after we click reports, we need to click download monthly report. So let's add another click and let's fix this label. Click monthly download monthly report and let's indicate that. So to indicate that, we need to press F2 first and then we need to focus in this element. Okay, seems like it's not working like in Chrome browser, so we need to do something in here. What I'm going to do is we'll just inspect this element and then so you can see this is a button and inside this button there is a list and this is the link that we need. I think we can just click directly to this link, but yeah, what should we do in here? Let's try to click it by another click activity. Let's try. I will just indicate this button first and then from here I will open UI Explorer so I can navigate to my target element because I cannot indicate that at the moment. So here look for the UL element and then under that is the li element or the list element, and then here you can see the oh, there's another element within that. I think it's better to use the anchor element. Okay, now that we have this, there is an AA name, a tag, and we can also include the inner text. And I think that should be all. Let's save it. And before, let me just check the selector. Let's try to validate it. Yeah, it's validating even if it's not showing on my window or on the page. So let's see if this will work. Let's hit OK and make sure to activate simulate click. And I think that's all for this sequence. Let's try to test it using run file. Okay, it works without error. Let's see. Yeah, it's working. Now let's go back. I think that's all for this sequence. We can now save and close this one. And the next step is we need to download invoices. And let me just try to read this guide or PDF guide. So here it says that we need to go inside the initialization scope and create a sequence after the kill all process. So I think we did it also in the calculate client security hash. So we need to add a sequence in here. So just drag that sequence activity. Let's name the sequence cleanup. And in here, we need to, okay, we need to add a setting in our configuration file. Let's name it download reports. And we need to provide a path in here. I just check what should be the name of the folder. Okay, so this should be set to data temp. Oops, I used the wrong slash. It should be forward slash. Make sure to save it. And the first thing that we need to do is delete that path. So let's add delete file, or yeah, there's no other delete activity in here. And the path should be equals to config download. Let me just copy it to make sure. Download reports, and that should be string. And I'm thinking that maybe on the initial run of this process, this folder is not existing, so it might have an error. So I think what we can do is just to say continue on error. And then the next thing is we need to create that folder or that directory using create folder activity, and let's use the same value in there. And I'm not expecting any error creating this folder, so we can just leave it as is. And what else do we need to do in here? Mm, Okay, now we need to go back to Process.xaml. Let me just make sure to save that. And then here in the process, we need to invoke the navigate to monthly report, and there's no argument needed in there. And then here we need to create a variable name report year. This should be an integer type. And here we need to add an activity, an assign activity. And we need to set it to report year is equals to, should be now the year minus 1, right? And then so we need to create a new sequence. So the name of the sequence is create yearly report. So let's start a new blank sequence. Let's name it system1 create yearly report. And again, make sure to save that inside the system1 folder. Now let's hit create. So here we need to create three in arguments. First one is the tax ID. Second one is the IN year. And the third one is the IN reports download path. Alright, and we also need to create one out argument, which is out yearly report path. And again, make sure to set the direction into out. And it's saying here in the guide that we need a new setting, which we already did earlier. Now we need to create a data table called TT yearly report. So let's create a variable, a data table variable. What's the name? Okay, it's DT yearly report. And again, make sure that the variable type is a data table. Now to start the sequence, we need to set the value of this data table into a new data table. So how to do that? You just need to add an assign activity, and then the two should be DT yearly report, and the value should be, oops, should not be private. I click it accident. Value should be a new data table. Okay, the next step is we need to add an activity name type into, and let's go to the page. We need to type here the tax ID. So let's indicate the element, and then let's change the label. So this should be equals to IN tax ID. Let me just check the selector. I think we can improve it. It just says input here. There should be something indicate that this is a tax ID field. So let's check. Yes, there is a name, vendor tax ID, and there's also an ID that we can use. So that should be enough. Now let's hit OK and make sure to click simulate type in here. Now the next thing is we need to add a click activity to select the month. So let's add a select activity. Not month, it says here the year. Yeah, let's select year. Where is the select? Okay, select item. Oops, should be select year. Now let's indicate that element. And as usual, UiPath cannot detect it. So what we can do is, oops, okay. Let's try to open UI Explorer. Let's go here. Let's open UI Explorer. And then let's try to indicate that element again. Oops, I got two UI Explorer open. Let's close the first one. Now let's indicate this select button or element again. And let's look for that element. Now you can see the select element in here. Just double click on that. And now we can use this element. Oh, sorry, we are working on the year drop down. So let's go here and yeah, let's look for select element. Should be report year. And now let's select the class. Let's also use the name, not the inner text, I think. I think this should be fine. We have a name report year. Now let's hit save. And yeah, it's validating. So this one should be good. And let's just take an informative screenshot. And here let's add the IN report or IN year. Oh, we got an error or no? Okay, none. Alright, the next thing is we need to select the month. And to do that, first we need to create a variable that is an array of string. So let's name it months. And it should be an array of string. So look for array of t and select string. Hit OK. And then we need to have an assign activity in here. And we need to assign a value on that variable. Okay. Now on the value, it should be an array. So it should be January, February, March, April, May, June. I think I can put this in the description so you don't need to type it like I'm doing. July, August, September, October, November, and the last, of course, is December. Again, Merry Christmas to you all. January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. Make sure that you spell every month correctly because that will affect our project. So after that, what we're going to do is we need to add a for each activity. So let's add a for each and we will be looping into the months variable. So let's say for each month in months, what we are going to do is select the month in here. So we'll be using select activity again. So this select item, and then let's try to indicate this month, and as usual it cannot be detected, so we'll be using the UI Explorer, and let's try to indicate that element again, and from here let's look for that select element, activate that, and now we can select other attributes like select picker plus the ID. There's also a name, and I think that should be good. And it's validating, so that should be fine. Now let's also label this select month, and let's take an informative screenshot like that, and the month selected should be equals to month. Mhm. Okay, we need to convert it to string, so let's say month that to string, so it will be accepted. And the next step after this is we need to click this download report button. So we need to add a click activity, so just put that after the select month, and let's indicate that download report button. Let's say download report, and let's simulate click. Let me just check the selector because we always want to have the best selector. I think this one is good because there's an ID. And after that, so after you click this download report button, there will be a pop-up if there's an invoice available or a report available based on the value selected. So let's try one. Let's uh, let's try one WI for items or item. Apologies. Look for a tax ID. Let's copy that. Let's go to download monthly report. Now let's paste that tax ID. Let's try January and 2020. Okay, so this report is available. Let's check the months where it is not available. So if it's not available, there will be a pop-up like this, and we need to click this. So the next step that we need to do is add an element exists activity. So let's say element exists, this one, and let's indicate that pop-up. Yep. And let me just check this selector. I think this should be good. It's validating. Let's try to highlight it. Okay. So we can call it, say, no report found. Let's create a output variable. If it was equal to true, if it's equal to true, meaning there's no available report for the selected month. And what else we can do in here? Um, yeah, I think that should be fine. Then we need to validate that. So we need to add an if statement. Okay, Now in this part, we need to validate if there's no report found on the selected month. So to do that, we need to check this output. So if no report found, we need to click this OK button. So let's click Show Else, and then we need to add a click activity on the then statement. And let's say click OK on pop-up, and let's indicate it, and let's just validate the selector, and I think it's good, and let's hit OK. And after that, it will just proceed on the next month. But if the if there's a report available on the selected month, we should be able to type in here the path where the report should be saved. So let's work on that. In the studio, um, we need to add a type into activity, and here we need to indicate this screen, and click this, and let's validate the selector first. Okay, let's try to highlight. Yep. And now let's set the text. It should be equals to our reports download path. And do not activate simulate type. And what else do we need to check in here? I think that should be good. And oh, sorry, I think the file path is wrong. Wait, let me just, oh, sorry. Before we do this, let me just delete this to avoid confusion. We need to have an assigned activity first. So here we have a, yeah, we need to create a new variable. Let's add an assigned activity. So let's name the variable, okay, let's create it from here, Control K, report file path, that should be of string type, and the file path should be equals to, based on the guide, it's equals to path that combine and environment dot current directory, and that will be in reports download path, and report dash plus in, did I spell reports download path correctly? Yep, plus another dash. So I'm just following the format based on the PDF guide, so make sure to check that as well. And then plus the month, which should be that so string, plus that CSV. Okay, and make sure there's no error, and hit OK. And then after that, that's the time that we will add the type into activity. Oops. And let's indicate uh, the field again where we will type the report file path. So let's check the selector again, and yeah, let's try to highlight it. Should be good. And now let's hit OK and set it to the report file path. Okay, did we miss anything in here? Okay, it should be good. Now the next thing is, Oh, well, actually, based on the guide, it says that we should also use simulate type. So let's see. And then after that, we need to click the save button. So we need to add another click activity, and let's name it click save. Why it's always hard to modify this label. So let's indicate the save button, and let's just validate the selector. Yep, should be good. Hit OK, and let's also try simulate type. Let's see if it will work, or simulate click rather. And now, after we save the file, we need to read it. So, okay. So now we need to add an activity named read CSV, and that will be the report file path, and we need to output it to a variable named DT monthly report. I think okay, we don't have that variable yet, so let's create it. DT monthly report, and the next thing is we need to add an activity named merge data table. So every time we capture monthly report data from 1 month, we need to merge it into our yearly report data table. So to do that, we just need to set the destination. The destination should be the DT yearly report, and the source should be the DT monthly report. And the next step is okay, so it says here that downloading the data might take some time. So I guess before we do the read CSV, we need to make sure that the file was successfully downloaded. I think it's different because on the PDF guide provided by the UiPath Academy, they use the Internet Explorer browser. So the download is different on how you download using a Google Chrome browser. And if in case you are experiencing like when you click the download report, it will automatically download without this save as option. So in order to show this, you just only need to go to your Chrome setting. So just go to setting, and then um, search for the download, and then make sure to enable ask where to save file before downloading, because if that is set to be disabled, what will happen is that when you download a file, it will be automatically downloaded without asking you where to save the file. So we don't want that to happen. So you will need to enable this setting to ask where to save each file before downloading. So make sure to enable that, so that every time you click the download report, you will have this option similar to Internet Explorer, and identify where to save the file. Okay, so we will add some activities in here to ensure that download is successful. We will be using an if uh, or file exists. Is there an activity file exists? Okay, I think I'm thinking of automation anywhere. So for the meantime, what I'm going to do is I will just add a default delay like a 3 seconds delay in every time it download the file. I think that's enough. So let's say 3 seconds to wait for the download to be completed. So there are better approach in doing this, and I will just leave that to you. So feel free to explore other activities just to ensure that the file is downloaded before you read it. So for now, for the meantime, I will just use a 3 seconds default wait time before we do the read CSV activity. So after merging the previous downloaded data into the yearly report data table, the next thing that we need to do is to delete that file. So let's add a delete file activity, and here we need to delete the report file path, which is the recent downloaded file. And after that, outside the if statement, we need to add or outside the for each statement rather, we need to add an activity, an assign activity. So it should be here. So this will be the out yearly report path. So it will be equals to, so another path dot combine environment dot current directory and in reports download path, then yearly report dash, oops, that should be part of that string, plus in year, plus a dash, and then followed by in tax ID and an extension .xlsx. Please make sure to follow this path or value correctly because this is critical on the validation of your project when you submitted this to your Path Academy. So make sure to copy this format correctly. Now after that, let's hit OK. So after doing that, we can now test this workflow. This is a critical workflow, so we need to ensure that this is working before we proceed on the next step. So in here, what we're going to do is assign a default value on this variable. So let's try to get some sample. I think we can use this tax ID. And then the year should be 2020. And reports download path, let's say data. Oops, that should be a forward slash. Uh, is that a forward slash? Oh no, it should be like this. Time. Yeah, hopefully I made it right. And yep, that's all that we need to do in order to test this. Now let's try. So since this is create yearly report, make sure that you are on this page. Let's just refresh it to remove the default values. And now we can use run file to test this workflow. Okay, it's select the first month. Click the button and yep, it is available. And okay, let's see what's happening. I think there's no error yet, so let's see. Or let's wait. What's going to do? Mm, okay, it is saying that this folder was not found. I think we need to create the temp folder for the meantime. So, yep, let's do that. Go to your file explorer and then inside the data folder. Oh, there's a temp folder that's created. Okay. So, what happened? I don't know. What's the error? Okay. I think that was the effect of the simulate type. So let's cancel this for the meantime. Let's try to refresh the page as well. And let's go back to our studio. Now what I'm going to do is deactivate simulate type as well as simulate click in here on the save. Yeah, I think it should be set to false because it's a different element and we are writing path. So let's try this now. Make sure that everything is clear. Now let's try run file. So it's taking some time. Later I will discuss why and we should be able to enhance this part so that it's not taking this some time. But now you can see that it's writing the path and it was able to save the file. Now it should go to the next month, but for now I will stop this because I want to change something. So you noticed earlier that it is taking some time uh, writing the path on this build, right? So you might thinking that maybe that has something to do with the type into. So maybe you're thinking that you need to set the wait for ready or assign a timeout milliseconds. So if that's your conclusion, I'm sorry to tell you, but that's wrong. So that problem came from this element exists activity. So I don't know what's the default wait time or timeout of this activity, but in order to solve that wait time issue, we need to put a default, we need to assign a timeout in this element exists activity. So let's put 3000 milliseconds, which is equals to 3 seconds on this element exists activity so that it will only wait for 3 seconds for the pop-up to show up. If not, it will save the file using the save as pop-up window. So now let's see if there will be an improvement by changing or by setting a timeout value to the element exists activity. Let's try to refresh everything again. And now, yep, I think the simulate type set to true is only applicable to Internet Explorer, but I cannot remember. But for Google Chrome, always make sure that the type into simulate type is set to false as well as the click save activity. Alright, now let's test it and for a lot of stories that I'm telling. Let's run file. Okay, now let's see if there will be an improvement on this one. Okay, now you see that after just a seconds, it was now typing the path. Unlike on our previous test, it's taking some time before it write the path on that save as a window. All right, it's now on the May, now June, or July. Is there only 1 month available in this? Okay, August is also available. So now you can see that it's oh, I think there's something wrong with the path. What happened in there? It was typed wrong. I think it's two pass. Let's see if we can do something to type into. Maybe we can add a delay between keys. So delay in keys, is it in milliseconds? Okay, the default amount is 10, maximum is 1000. I think we can set it to 50. Let's try. Let's save it, and we need to clear this folder first. Okay, it's already clear. So now let's try it again. So it's good that it's good having this error because we're getting familiar into other properties of the UiPath activities, and you will be able to utilize it someday for sure. Now let's try this workflow again using run file. Let's see if there will be any improvement with the set text or type into activity. So as you see on the attributes, by default it is using 10 milliseconds, which I think is too fast. So we just update it into 50 milliseconds. I'm not sure if you will see the difference, but it's a bit slower if you will observe. I think you can ensure here that it will not miss any character. I think that is what happened on the uh, next report. Okay, let's try to activate the page so we can see what is really happening in here. Okay, I think I did something wrong. I should not click when the program is working. So I guess this will give me an error, so I will stop it. And we don't have a choice but to rerun it. Let me try it again. Apologies for that mistake. I should just let it run. So let's just let it run. Let's. I hope this will be the last time we will try this run file. Okay, working on the first available report again. Yep, there's an improvement on the type into activity in terms of the delay between each characters. I think 3 seconds is too fast. So you should not really be clicking somewhere here. Okay, seems like 3 seconds is too fast on the delay or wait time for the element to exist. I think we need to improve it or we need to update it. Yeah, I guess it will be an error now because it's not able to click it. So let's update it. I'm sorry if it's keep on happening, but well, I guess we're getting something. We're learning something from here. So I think 5 seconds should be enough for this activity. So let's set it to 5 seconds. Now let's, oh no, I clicked the wrong button. Make sure to save, and let's make sure that this is clear. Now let's test this one again. Okay, next month. Okay, March, April. Please show. Okay, sometimes it's taking some time for the pop-up to show. Getting nervous. I I hope this is the last test for this workflow. But I guess you learn something on this workflow because we debug a lot of things in here, and that would be helpful. So here is where we get an error earlier, and I think it's working fine now. Okay, it worked. So 3 months to go. Oh, 4 months to go. And yeah, while we are watching this, please make sure to subscribe to my channel, and if I will be able to help you until the end, then I have my PayPal ID on the comment on the description, so feel free to donate. That is not required, it's just only if you just want. I hope it's doing the same thing on your end if you are also testing. Now, 2 more months. I think November has available report as well. Maybe the 50 milliseconds on delay between texts is too slow. You can you can try to experiment that. You can update that if you want. Later, I might update it to 20 millisecond instead of 50. And this will be the last month. I hope it works so that I can. So I'm confident that this one is working before I proceed to the next part of the process. Okay, I think we had a good test. All right, was able to finish one tax ID. So that's only one tax ID. So imagine guys, if you have 18 items on your queue, so it would take that time per each tax ID. So that's one of the challenges on testing this activity. It will really take some time. So we're good now on this part. We can now delete the default value that we add. So I have 5 seconds on the element exists activity. And before I proceed to the next step, I will just modify the type into activity delay between keys attribute. I think 25 is good, so I'll see it later. Hopefully, it will not cause me an issue. And after that, we can now save this and close it. Now let me check the guide on what would be the next step. Okay, after that we can go back to the process and we need to invoke that workflow that we just created, that is create yearly report. And in here there are some arguments that we need to set. So the tax ID should be equals to the tax ID. The IN year should be equals to report year. But since report year is an integer, we need to set it to string. And then the download path should be equals to this one. Copy that, and here let's say Oh, there's no config. It should be inconfig that to string and hit OK. Oh, I think I forgot another one. There's a output yearly report path. So let's create a variable for that. Yearly report path. Let's hit OK. Oh, what did I do? Let's try it again. Let's press Control K. Yearly report. Oops. Path. And that should be fine. Let's see if that variable was created. Oh, I have now two of that variable. Let's delete the other one. Now let me just validate. Okay, should be yearly report path and hit OK. Now the next thing is okay, we again need to invoke navigate to dashboard activity. So where is that navigate to dashboard? Let me just check this workflow. I think I have an attached browser in here, but in this case, the attached browse. Oh no, it's just a click activity. Let me just check the selector. Okay, as you can see in here, if we are on this page and if we will call that workflow, it's failing because based on its selector, it's looking for the work items. And currently, right now, we are at download monthly report page title. So in order to make this flexible and to resolve that issue, we just need to remove this work item word in here and replace it with a wildcard. Now let's try to validate it and now it's working. Now hit OK. Make sure to save that. Navigate to dashboard. Now we can close it. Okay, now we need to create a new workflow. So let's create a new blank sequence. We will name this one system 1 navigate to monthly report and make sure to save this inside the system1 folder and hit create. So with here, let's start with an attached browser activity. So look for attached browser, this one, and let's attach the dashboard page and happen. Let's try it again. Okay, so I think there's no need to change anything on the selector. That should be good. So within the do, we need to add a click activity to click this report button again, similar to navigate to create monthly report. So we need to add a click activity and indicate this button. And we can activate simulate click in there. Let me just check the selector. Um, I think this should be good. Now we need to add another click to select upload yearly report. But since we cannot indicate that element, what I'm going to do is just indicate the report button again. And then we will be using the UiPath or UI Explorer to go into our target element. So click this edit selector and then let's open in UI Explorer. And once you do that, we'll look for the link element. So that should be the second link in here. And then let's just use the anchor element. I'm just waiting for it to load. Okay, now we're at the anchor element, and you can see here that the AA name is upload yearly report. Make sure that you have the same. We will also select the inner text attribute, and yeah, I think that's good enough. Now let's hit save and make sure that it's validating. After that, let's hit OK and let's activate simulate click. Now we can test it. So let's try and see if this one works. So let's use run file. And yep, it's working. We're now at the upload yearly report page. So that's all that we need to do in this sequence. Now make sure to save that and close that workflow. Now going back to the process, we need to invoke that newly created workflow. So navigate to, where is that? Navigate to upload. Oh, it should be upload. I think I name it monthly report with the wrong spelling. Let's check. Let me just check the selector. Oh, this is the upload yearly report. Okay, can I rename this? Let me try if I can rename this activity or this workflow. Oh, not framework. It should be within system one and this one. So let's try to rename this. What did I do? I did. Okay, I thought I cannot reset it. Let's try to rename it. Should be navigate to, what's the name again? Upload yearly report. So I hope you did not make the same mistake that I did. So now let's close this. Let's try to refresh and let's see if this one still work. So what we did is just we just rename it and let's test. Let's go to the dashboard page first. Okay, apologies for my internet. It's kind of slow. Now let's test it. Upload yearly report or navigate to upload yearly report. Okay, still working. Yep. Alright, now let's save that, and on the process workflow we need to invoke that, and there's no argument needed in there. And the next thing is we need to create another sequence named upload yearly report. So let's create a new blank sequence. Let's name it system1 upload yearly report. And again, make sure to save that within the system1 folder. Hit the create button. So in here, we need to start adding three string argument. First one is the tax ID. Next one is the IN report path. And then IN year. And we need to have an output argument as well. We will name it out upload ID and make sure to change the direction to out. And all of these arguments should be of argument type string. Okay, the next step is we need to, of course, add an attached browser activity and indicate that upload yearly report page. And then next activity is to add a type into. Now let's indicate the tax ID. Let me just validate the selector of that element. Make sure that it's good. I think it's not. So let's try to open UI Explorer and try to find a better attribute. Yep, I think we can use the ID. We can also use the name, and that should be good. And we can also activate simulate type in here. And let's set the value equals to the IN tax ID. And after that, we need to select the year. So to do that, we need to add a select item activity. And let's try to select this. Okay, I will be needing UI Explorer in this one. Now let's indicate that element. And here we need to find that select element. So this one, report year. And from here, we can now select other attributes like ID, the class. We can also use the name, and I think that's enough. And yep, it's good, it's validating. Now let's take an informative screenshot. And of course, let's select the Ioneer. And after that, we need to click this select report file. So we need to add a click activity. And indicate that element. Now let's validate the selector as well. Now I think it's good enough. There's an AA name. I think that's a good reference. Just waiting for it to be validated. And then we can set simulate click to true. And then let me just check the guide. Maybe I'm already missing something. Okay. So after you click this, you will be asked to select the file that you want to upload. So we need to add a type into activity. And let's indicate this field in here. And then let's just validate the selector. Okay, I'm not sure if this is a good selector, but let's try to highlight. Maybe it's fine. So let's see if this will work, or maybe we need to change it. So let's try. Make sure that simulate type is not activated. And after that, we need to set it to the IN report path value. Okay. And then we need to add another click activity to click the upload button. So let's indicate that. Oh, before we click upload report, we need to click this open button first on the open dialog box. So let me just check the selector. Okay, open is good. Okay. Again, make sure that simulate click is not activated. And after you click open, we need to click upload report. So let's add another click activity. And let's indicate this element. And let's check the selector. Okay, I think that should be fine. Let's hit OK. And what else do we need to do? So after you click upload, there will be a pop-up. So let's try. Let's try one tax ID to simulate that. Okay, my PC is slowing. Let's try this one. So let's use this tax ID. And then let's go to upload yearly report. Let's select 2020. Let's select report path. There was no, let's try this file instead. And then let's click upload report. And once you click that, you will see this. So we need to capture that. So from here, after this click, we need to use a get text activity. And let's get this text. And let's check the selector. So we need to add a wildcard in here because the confirmation ID is dynamic value. It keeps on changing. Let's try to validate and it's still good. So it should be fine. Now let's set this to um, out upload ID. And then we need to sanitize this. We need to remove this text in here. So is there a formula? Okay, they did not provide. Oh, there is a substring formula in here. Let's just use that. Let's use an assign activity. Apologies if I did no long if I did not label some of the activities. So here we need to clean our upload ID, and then on the value it will be equals to uh, upload ID that substring report. Okay, let me just check. Report was uploaded. Report was uploaded. Confirmation ID is mhm, confirmation ID is, yep, there's a space. Okay, let's try this one. And well, in order to test this, well, before that, we also need to click this OK button from the pop-up. So let's add another click activity. And let's indicate that button. Now let's validate the selector. Let's try to highlight. Yep, I think it's good. Hit OK. And again, don't activate the simulate click, and that should be all for this workflow. So I think we need to test this. So let's for the meantime add a write line activity, and I just want to show the, or I just want to see the upload ID. Upload ID. So let's add a default value in here for the meantime. Do you have a sample? Okay, let's try this. Tax ID, the report year should be 2020. Oh no, that's a report path. Oh, okay. So for the report path, I think what we can do is let's try to upload the config file instead because we don't have a report yet created. So let me just get this path. You can do shift right click and you will see this option copy as path, and now we can just paste that path in here, and now we can test this one. Make sure that you are on this page, so make sure to clear everything here, and now let's test this workflow. Okay, was it not able to click the report file? Okay, just wait for it. Okay, there was an error, I think. Okay, I think I was not able to click this. Let me check why. Click. This one is set to true, but I did not click. Let me just validate the select. Yep, this one should be good. Okay, let's try it again. And I don't know why it failed. Let's try it again. Okay, again, I think it's failing to click. It's taking some time now. Let me just inspect that part. Should click that. So let me just check this. Let me test this. Test activity. And let's continue. Is it able to click? No. Why is that? Should be something like this. Okay, maybe we need to do something in here. Okay, it's a label element and there is a class. I think we can also use the parent ID as well as the inner text. So let's try to validate. and highlight. Now let's save, and now let's test this activity again using right click and then select test activity and continue. Oh, let's check. Oh, it's not clicking the button. Let's try to remove simulate click. I'm not sure if that has some effect then. Okay. Oh, just the simulate click. Okay, now we can test this workflow again. Let's just make sure that all the information on this page is clear before we test our workflow. Now, let's go back to Studio and hopefully now it works. Let's try it. Let's do run file. There you go. And let's see. Upload ID is, yeah, I think that is correct. So this one should be good now. Before we leave this workflow, let's make sure to remove the default value that we assigned. And I think the type into is a bit fast. So in my end, I will just modify the delay between keys to 25. But if you don't see any possible issue on the default delay between keys, then you should be fine with 10 milliseconds. Then make sure to save it. And yep, now let's go on the next step. So for the next step, we need to go back to the process workflow, and from this page, we need to invoke the workflow that we just created, which is the upload yearly report. So this one, and here we need to provide the arguments. So the tax ID should be the tax ID. The report path should be the yearly report path. IN year should be um, the report year. We need to convert it to string. And upload ID, we need to create a new variable for this one. So press Ctrl K and let's call that upload ID. Now hit OK after that. Next one is we need to invoke navigate to dashboard page again because we are on this page. Now we need to click home link again to navigate back to the dashboard page. So we will just invoke navigate to dashboard, and previously we modified this code to make it flexible. So wherever it is or whichever page it is, it should be able to click that home link. And then after that, we need to invoke the navigate to work item details. And here we need to set the arguments. So the WIID is WIID. And again, we need to convert it into integer. So let's just use the function cint. Oops. And then for the system1 URL, we need to use our system1 URL name in our config file. So that. So remember guys, we have the WIID. That's the first variable that we created on this process workflow. And after that, we need to call or invoke the update work item. So that's system1 update work item. And in here, there are two arguments. So the comment, this should be the upload ID, and then the status should be set to completed. So after that, just hit OK. And let me just check what's next. Oh, okay, sorry. For the comment, we need to set it to, there's an additional text, not just the upload ID. It should be uploaded with ID space, and then let's just add an add sign to concatenate the upload ID. And that should be good. And next step is we need to invoke again, navigate to dashboard page. So this one. And according to the guide, we are done with the implementation. So now we can test this project from the main flow. So let's save this first, and again make sure that in your Acme System 1 uh, that you okay, no, sorry. Never mind what I'm going to say. So now, before we test it, make sure to close your configuration file, but make sure to save any changes that we made. And then in your browser, make sure to log out any System 1 applications, and let's just wait for it to, okay. And close the browser as well. So remember, on the first part of the project or first part of the exercise, in our dispatcher part, we send items to the queue. So I don't know how many items do you have, because that depends on the batch of items that you get. So we will be working on those items using our performer project. So now I will be testing this project from the main workflow. But before that, let's check first if there is any error by using analyze file and validate project. And right now there's no error found, so I guess we should be good to test this file. I will be testing it using a debug, so that if in case there will be any issue, you will be able to see it easily. So let's run it now. And you can now run your project as well. And let's see. Okay, it captured the tax ID. Now it's doing the download report part. Yeah, that's 25 delay between keys, 25 milliseconds. Okay, that's another report downloaded. Okay, I think the creation of a monthly rep or the downloading of monthly report is working smoothly. So let's see later on the uploading part if it will be the same. All right, so that's one tax ID. Okay, I will be doing the upload part. Okay, that's the problem. The file was not found. Okay, let's check that. I will stop the project for now and let's see why there is no uh, yearly file created. So let me go to um, that should be on the create yearly report. So let's check this. So we have a for each loop in here, and then after that we said okay. Okay, I think we forgot one activity in here. Um, we created the path, but we did not write the we did not write a CSV with the that will contains the DT yearly report data table. So I guess that is what we miss in this part. So let me go ahead and add another activity name. Um, write CSV. Yep. And then here we need to identify the path, which should be the out yearly report path, and the data table should be the DT yearly report. Okay, let me just check on the guide if I really missed that part or if that was not mentioned. Mm, just give me a minute. Okay, so based on it was mentioned on the guide, I think I miss it. I probably miss it, and I did not notice that our out yearly report path is a .xlsx file, so we cannot use write CSV. Instead, what we need to use is write range. So let's look for that activity. Oh, we have that write range under the Excel activity. So let's just put that in here and then okay, so since there is no path in here, I think we need to uh, use Excel application scope first, and then here we need to define the path. So all yearly report, and now we can add the right range activity, and that should be the DT yearly report. So let me just check if there are other right range activity in here because I remember there's a right range activity with okay, there's one for Excel and there's one for workbook. Let me just check this one. Okay, I think we can use this one instead because this one include a a path that, where we can set the path, and then here let's put TT yearly report, and that should be fine. Let's just save it, and going back to our browser, make sure to cancel that and log out on the application, and let's also close the browser. So again, make sure that you add this activity. It's a right range under workbook, and then define the path and then the data table to be written on that Excel path. Okay, make sure to save it, and now let's close that workflow. Let's go back to main and let's run it again by a debug. So again, bot will start on navigating to the system 1 applications, and then log in using the asset credential in from Orchestrator. Go to work items, and then get the tax ID of the vendor information. Go to download monthly report by pasting the tax ID, and then select month from January till December. And then if there will be available report on each month, it will be downloaded and it will be saved to the data temp folder. And if there's no available report, then that pop-up will show up, and bot will just need to click the OK button. So we get another available report for the month of August. And another one for September. And if you will notice, just make sure that you are following the file name correctly. So it's report dash tax ID dash month dot year, and it's another one for the month of October. So this testing part will really take some time because there's a lot of report available on each tax ID. Okay, going to the last month, and I think there's another available report in this month. Right, and after that, it will navigate back to dashboard page, and then go to reports upload yearly report using the tax ID and the year, and then it will look for the yearly report file, which was found now, and then capture the upload ID. Okay, did I miss to click this OK button? OMG, I think I missed this. Okay, it's taking some time now. Let me just check. Yeah, I think I forgot clicking this ID. I think I got excited. Let's try to stop this now because it's okay. It has an error now. It cannot click the home. It cannot navigate back to dashboard because you cannot click anywhere in here unless you close this pop-up. So let's check that part now. Let's go back to upload yearly report workflow. So go to project, upload yearly report, and then I guess I forgot to click the OK button. Oh, there is a click button in here, but what's the problem? Let's see. Hmm. Okay. Get text. I think I forgot to set it to wait for ready complete. Hmm. Let me just see. Yeah, upload ID was captured, but it was not able to click this button in here. Hmm. Okay, let me test this activity. Let's continue. Hmm. Why it's working now? So I'm not sure if I need to add something in here because getText was captured and it was able to print the upload ID, but it missed on this part. So I think we cannot use simulate click in here. So let's just give it a try again, and I will just pass forward some of the parts so that I'll not get bored. So please make sure to test your project as well. So during testing, make sure to always log out from the applications and close the browser. Now I will close this workflows and go back to main again and run the project via debug. Okay, it will attempt to upload the yearly report again. Okay, it is now successful. Clicking that OK button. Now it should update the work item. Okay, it's working fine now. Now, I think what should happen is that it will lag out. Oh no, it will proceed to the next item. Okay. So it's a new tax ID now. So I guess everything is working fine. So let me just observe this and again fast forward some of the parts. If in case there will be any error, I will just stop the video there. Okay, this is the second item now and it will attempt to upload the second yearly report created. Okay, and it is also successful in that part. Let's see if it will be able to upload the work item. Okay, things working fine. Now, this will be my last tax ID on my testing. If it goes successful, then I am pretty confident that the other items will be processed successfully as well.
Okay, that's the last month. Then after this, it will attempt to upload again the yearly report file on the upload yearly report page. So as you can see, there are currently now 3 yearly reports for the 3 tax ID it processed. And it was able to capture the upload ID. And now it will go to work items, take the work item, and
Okay, I think it's working perfectly, and I hope that's doing the same thing on your end. So I'm going to stop this now because I knew that the other transaction will be processed successfully as well. But let me just discuss some of the things that you also need to check in here. So your after the project completed all the items, You can check that in your orchestrator queue. But if you encounter also failure during your first testing, during your first run, I would suggest that once you made three items completed successfully, what you can do is stop the run, reset your work items, and then run the dispatcher again so that you will have new fresh data, and then run the performer. Because what will happen every time you fail to work on an item, or if there's an error encountered during processing one tax ID, it will already be tagged as not completed or not successful in the orchestrator queue. So if you uploaded your project in UiPath Academy, you might not get the 100% score. So let me just check the orchestrator. I'm expecting that I have three items that was successfully completed, and I think two to three items that had a problem or had an issue. So let's check that. So once you are on your orchestrator, go to the queue tab, and then here, check this. You will see that there is one in progress, and there are still 12 remaining and 5 successful. And let's try to view these transactions. Okay, so these are those items. Oh, these are still new. Where are these successful? So these are the successful. I think this is the one that we stop or we debug. Yep. Some of these items are successful or completed, but there are some here that was tagged as successful, but the later part of the process did not really went successfully. So again, what I would suggest is that if during your testing, if you did not encounter any error during the testing, then that should be fine. Don't need to reset your test data. But if in case during your first run you got some items that had an error and you need to fix something, then after you fix everything and you see that there are at least three items being processed successfully, then I would suggest that you reset your test data, and then what you can do in the orchestrator queue is recreate this orchestrator queue so that there will be no items. It will go back from the start. And then after that, run your dispatcher project so that it will insert new items to the orchestrator queue. And after that, run your performer process. So I hope that this video helps you, especially in completing this activity, so you get the advanced certification of UiPath. Just in case you have any question or you're experiencing some hard time working on this exercise, just feel free to put your question or inquiry on the comment section of this video. And also please make sure to include the timestamp of the video if you have uh, anything that you want to clarify, like why I did that, why I put that value to this part. I will be I would like to answer those inquiry and question from you. And again, please make sure to subscribe to this channel, and if I were able to help you, feel free to donate to my PayPal ID, which is in the description below. You can also email me at happycodinginlife@gmail.com if you don't want to put that in the comment, but I prefer that you put that in the comment because I'm receiving hundreds of emails daily. So again, I hope that this video will be able to help you, and I hope that you get a 100% score for this activity. So I think that's all for this for now, and see you again for the next video.